I want to talk, if we can, a little today about President Obama's bathroom edict because there's some breaking news on that, and it's happening not only in Washington, but it's happening as well in states like Oregon and Utah. Those are right in our backyard. And if I get an opportunity this morning, I want to delve into a little bit of that. I just did a very quick update, a video update, a live update at Facebook a few minutes ago, cluing some people in, the handful of folks who are watching that, giving them some of the arguments about what's going on now with this and what direction it's headed. We also have to make maybe a couple of quick comments about what's going on over in the Mediterranean Sea today. And it's just that the Greek officials who are investigating this plane that blew up during the course of the night on its way to Egypt. Egypt Air is a big airline in that part of the world. It had just left Greek waters when it exploded over the Mediterranean, maybe only minutes from arriving at its destination in Egypt. And the Greek officials who are looking into this, they're now telling Fox News they believe they have found the debris in the Mediterranean Sea. It's got to be a wide field. Now, it either took a nosedive or it exploded. It's just at this point, all we know is that it just vanished from the screens. The air traffic controllers were tracking it, and all of a sudden, it wasn't there any longer. And there is some concern it might be terrorism. Now, there was a briefing in Egypt earlier this morning where they broached that subject and said, they will take a serious look at it. But we just don't know yet. We don't really have, I think, a full grasp that that's what it was, and it may be some time. I was watching some of the reports on it this morning before I left the house. I was sipping some coffee and had the TV set on in the background, and somebody pointed out, they said that all of the usual suspects, the usual bad guys, at that hour still had not taken credit for it. And oftentimes what will happen is there'll be some disaster around the world, and all of these terrorist groups that would like to get the public relations mileage out of it, not necessarily positive public relations, but in their part of the world it helps them recruit sometimes. They none of them had come forward. No ISIS, no Al Qaeda, no Boko Haram. Not that they would be involved in this, but no one had come forward and said, "I did it." So they were still waiting for someone to make a claim, and that cast doubt perhaps on the terrorism aspect. But the strange thing is one of these people I watched this morning, these security experts that they always trot out when these things happen, said what makes him suspicious is that it vanished simply after leaving Greek airspace. As soon as it cleared Greek airspace, gone. Just like that. And there was a merchant vessel in the area, and the captain of that vessel claims he saw a flaming streak across the sky. Now, was he watching the plane go down, or was he watching something, perhaps a missile, targeting the plane? People argue, well, you can't really be sure what that is in the sky. People see a lot of things. They may be confused, but as the fellow who was reviewing that on television this morning said, a guy who serves in the merchant marine, who runs a merchant ship, keeps a pretty good eye on the sea and sky, and he knows when there's something that's an anomaly, that isn't normal, if you will, that doesn't happen in an average day. So he brought that up as well. And we also believe that the attack on the Russian airliner over the Sinai last year, that was also terrorist related. There may be a lot to talk about here in the coming days with all of this. I'm just telling you right now, that's what we know so far. You can make a lot of conclusions. Doesn't always mean your conclusions are going to be right. I did see a story this morning. It may have been at Washington Times, and the writer is a congressman by the name of Babin, and I believe he's the son of Jed Babin, who is a Coloradan, and I've had some contact with the elder Mr. Babin in the past, and he worked in the Department of Defense with a mutual friend, and so I trust that these people know what they're talking about. But the younger Mr. Babin, who's a congressman, was saying in a piece at Washington Times today, we have got to be greatly concerned. The younger Mr. Babin is the fellow who has introduced a bill to tighten the security for vetting refugees coming from that part of the world. But he said what we're currently seeing all around the Mediterranean, that's in Europe, and that's in the Middle East, and that's in North Africa, is really a world of flame. And we don't want that. That's the key. And we had a little discussion on this yesterday, and I know it's been discussed in this community now for over a year. I'm a believer that people don't have an issue with a friendly neighbor. We do have an issue if somebody slips through the cracks that means us harm. And our own security community apparatus in Washington has said it's likely it's happened. So we have to, and every time you hear liberals, and I was bringing this up in my little preview of the show live on Facebook this morning in the last hour, Every time you hear a liberal talk about something like that school shooting, I keep repeating this on the air, but you cannot forget it. That school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, the first thing they were saying is one dead child is too many. We've got to take people's guns away. Then after the shooting in San Bernardino that left, 13 people dead, 13 or 14 dead? We heard, well, we've got to be nicer to these people from other parts of the world and guns are bad. The only connecting idea between the two shootings was guns are bad. But I would say that a person who was shot and killed at a Christmas party in San Bernardino, that's one too many as well. But Lefty won't look at it that way because, according to Lefty, terrorists are a victimized class. And, it's our own white privilege that caused this. It has nothing to do with the fact that they may be bad people. We just have to understand that and get in touch with their feelings, allow them to get in touch with their feelings, and give them everything we have because, obviously, we have enjoyed 200 years in this country, 250 years of white privilege, and therefore we owe the rest of the planet everything we have. And wouldn't it be nice if we all went and slit our wrists and jumped into the ocean simultaneously so that we could save the planet, reduce our carbon footprint, and allow all of the brown and black peoples of the world to do what they really need to do, and that is self-actualize and really get in touch with their feelings on a permanent basis. It's 8:13. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I got a couple of things I wanted to mention today because these moral equivalencies, or the lack of moral equivalencies on the American left, are exactly what is behind Obama's bathroom diktat. That is, just a week ago tomorrow, that he released a report from his Justice Department and his Education Department, and they said all schools across the country are going to follow his guidance, and the boys are going to be allowed to go pee in the girls' room or pee in the shower in the girls' locker room. And if schools don't go along with it, they won't get any federal funding, and they could be fined as well. So it's a double whammy. Yesterday, Congressman Raul Labrador was talking with me about it on the program, and he said, yes, it's a distraction. It's to keep our eyes away from what's seriously wrong in this country. That is, that we are trillions of dollars in debt we may never be able to pay off. That is, that the economy has barely grown in the two Obama administrations. And yet, it is a distraction. He's right. It is true. But here's the thing, and this is what I was trying to tell people in the preview. I would highly recommend you watch those previews on Facebook if you get the chance to as well, because I can say some things there that I can't say over the highly regulated airwaves of radio. But I was talking about what's going on here and where we've gone with this idea, this notion. And I have to tell you, we're in serious, serious trouble in this country right now because these people, the lunatics, are running the asylum, and they must really be loony. I can't, there's only two conclusions people can reach. Obama intends to destroy us culturally, or number two, he's bats. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But I was sharing some of my thoughts on this a little earlier today, and those people who got a chance to see that know I'm a little more colorful when I have that opportunity. I had a politician tell me one time, a liberal politician, she got angry with me and said, well, Bill, define normal. Well, it's that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach. And, something's wrong or something is an aberration. You get a feeling in the pit of your stomach and it says, that's not right. There's an old line, and I'm paraphrasing it. One of the Supreme Court justices was asked what obscenity was. He said, well, I may not be able to define it, but I know what it is when I see it. And aberrational behavior or abnormal behavior, these are things you know when you see them, and they make you uncomfortable. And I'm a firm believer that grown adults can make their own choices about what they'd like to do in life as long as they don't harm other people. But on the other hand, my kid doesn't need to see it. 8:16, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Last week we told you the story about a man who was in a ladies' room in Chicago, public restroom. The woman heard her 8-year-old daughter screaming, and when she barged in, the girl was already unconscious, and the thug was dragging the girl into a bathroom stall, obviously so he could rape her unconscious body. And he's now in jail where he belongs, but we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. But I really believe that Lefty wants someone to go in there and punch the snot out of a guy like that, and then they can claim, oh, he was a martyr for the cause. All he wanted to do was use the potty, and the little girl got in his way and called him names because he thinks he's a girl too. So he was enraged. What would you expect him to do? That was Chicago last week. How about Dallas, Fort Worth area? A Ross department store. This is the local CBS TV affiliate reporting last night about what took place in a store there. I want you to listen to this for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and this woman said she wasn't just upset with the fact that this man was in the women's dressing room at this Ross Dress for Less, but what she saw him wearing when he finally walked out.
I was mad and kind of appalled, I guess, at the same time.
Lisa Stickles told me she shops at this Ross a few times a week, but never again.
Take your clothes back. I'm not going to try anything on here anyway.
Lisa said Monday she heard a man in the women's dressing room and told a manager who went to check it out.
He came right back out and called me to the side and told me that he was representing himself as a woman today.
Lisa said she complained, stayed in the store, and called corporate long enough to see the man walk out.
And he was in no way dressed as a woman. He had on jeans, a t-shirt, 5 o'clock shadow, very deep voice. He was a man.
Ross didn't comment specifically on the incident, but told me they don't discriminate against the transgender community. Policies at other big chain retailers vary, according to customer service. Target, TJ Maxx, and Marshalls allow customers to decide based on gender identity. Kohl's forces customers to use facilities based on their biological gender, and Walmart had no specific policy at all.
So what about me, or my feelings are making me feel uncomfortable? And
Lisa doesn't think any of the policies work for her, especially if they can be easily exploited.
it was, more like he was doing it because he could. So that's kind of how I took it.
And I must mention that some of the department stores, like Target, do have unisex dressing rooms that they use. The ones that do not, though, told me they have no signage outside of their dressing rooms describing their transgender policy.
No, when he referenced Walmart not really having a policy or a statement on this, and I'm only judging by our local Walmart in Twin Falls, there is no shared dressing facility. So when you need to try something on, you get your own private room. So that's not an issue. It's a good way to divide it up. You avoid that whole question. But I just was reading the other day, even the venerable liberal New York Times had a story about a pool in Manhattan, the northern part of Manhattan, where all of these wealthy liberals take their little girls to swim. Well, there's been a man who's been showing up every day, and he's been showering in the girls' locker room. I'm sure he'd like some of them to come in so that he could then express himself even more while he was showering. And someone who managed the pool was asked, why haven't you asked this fellow what he's up to? And the fellow who ran the pool said, oh, they won't allow us to even ask if he feels like he's a woman or not. So they're not even allowed to bring up the subject. So this pervert is allowed to go in there on a daily basis and take a shower. And you know what's happened? It's killed the pool business. Parents aren't bringing their little girls any longer. In fact, they're not even bringing their little boys. We got a serious crisis in this country, and I'll share a couple more thoughts on this following the break. An equation I made, speaking of a moral equivalency to World War II, coming up in just a few minutes on the program. Bill Colley with you this morning. It's 64. It's 20 after 8. Wanted to point out quickly, Dr. Jonathan Tripp was in studio with us yesterday, was talking about a mission trip that he is going to be undertaking with members of his family to Nicaragua. And his two sons have to pay their own way, and he was explaining they have to do this by mowing a lot of lawns and doing a lot of odd jobs. It's part of growing up and teaching them a little bit about responsibility and the like. And we'd like to remind you that his office, they're very altruistic. That's a big word, I know, but it describes the work that they do over there. We'll have a guest in from his office coming up next Wednesday between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. And I'd like to remind you, too, it's a growing practice. They're still looking for new patients. And new patients can get involved with Tripp Family Medicine by just calling and saying you're looking for a doctor in the area or some medical professionals. You can often see them, too, on the same day if you have an urgent need. The office is located on Fillmore Street in Twin Falls, directly across from the main post office. And, of course, life's too short not to feel good. It's a great little motto that they have at the office. We have a caller with us, and I'm going to call it 825. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. I just wanted to add a comment on what you spoke about earlier regarding the trouble our nation is in. In 1995, David Blankenhorn wrote a remarkably well-researched book called Fatherless America. And he described what had happened to all the great civilizations that have existed prior who have disappeared. great civilizations that had written records of their societies. And their disappearance occurred at the point that sexual morality and moral guidelines and principles that not only protected the family and the community, but the children all disappeared. There was no longer any guidelines. Sexuality behavior was at the discretion of the individual. And those societies all disappeared.
Very true, and I thank you much for the input because I have a clipping here that I think speaks well to that. There was a fellow by the name of Cardinal Robert Serra, and he attended in Washington yesterday the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. He is actually from Africa. He's a cardinal of the Roman Catholic Church, but he is an African a bishop, and they have a far different view about morality than the Western world has. He is likely going to be the next leader of that church, and he could reverse some of the current leftist policies that his predecessor is trying to institute. Sarah blasted gender ideology, according to LifeSite News. Quote, ideological colonization, insidious, unquote. He said it is the dismantling of religious freedom in the United States, and he went on to say this. All manner of immorality is not only accepted and tolerated today in advanced societies, but even promoted as a social good. The result is hostility to Christians and increasingly religious persecution. And he says, nowhere is this clearer than the threat that societies are visiting on the family through a demonic gender ideology, a deadly impulse that is being experienced in a world increasingly cut off from God through isolational or ideological colonialism. 8:27 now. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. What I was going to say earlier when Raul Labrador mentioned yesterday that this is a distraction, but it's not, you can't ignore it. Look, World War II was fought on multiple fronts. If you were fighting the war as MacArthur was in the Pacific, you were angry because you didn't get the resources right away you thought you needed because they were going to Eisenhower in Africa and Europe. Eisenhower sometimes was frustrated because MacArthur was getting some of the resources. So we've got a two-front war against the Obama administration. Right now it is this. Number one, the economic issues, but number two, these moral issues as well. And one thing they learned in World War II is you could not ignore one front at the expense of the other. You still had to fight on both. We have to fight this war against these demonic people on both of these fronts. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Well, I think that his intent is chaos. He's an anarchist. I mean, even if it doesn't actually work, I think he gets great enjoyment out of seeing us react to what he does. I don't think he, let's face it, you and I, being of the color of skin we are, his hatred for us is probably, we can't even begin to measure it, I think. One more thing, I heard that Pilot and Flying J, who are a Utah company and owned by the predominant religion from that state, now I could be wrong, we're either doing transgender bathrooms or they're catering this type of thing. I don't know, and I didn't know if you knew. I'll hang up. Thanks, Bill.
I don't know for sure, and I used a lot of Flying J's over the years because I've had to do a lot of driving. But look, if a business wants to put in a private bathroom and say anybody can use it, problem solved. The issue is, though, these diktats from the White House saying you're going to have it happen not only in the girls' restrooms at school, but you're going to do it in the locker rooms too. The FCC is all that holds me back from saying what I'd really like to say about all of this and the unemployment line. But trust me, it is one of those things that has me so dang upset. I am ready to explode at some point, and it may well happen. God help me. We've got a break coming up. Ken Menzel is going to be joining us in just a few minutes from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. That's on the way. Bill Colley with you, too, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Oh, Basin Street Blues. Love that. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. I'm going to do a little camera trick here. I had it turned around for Ken's visit. I'm going to turn it back around this way. We had a discussion yesterday. I think I mentioned in the last couple of days. Well, I know I mentioned it today, that before I've been going on the air this week, I've been trying to spend a few minutes, and I do a live video on Facebook before we actually hit air, but I do that on my personal Facebook page, And I think we're working on a change here in the studio so our studio cameras could be rigged so that you could literally watch our show take place on a daily basis on the Facebook page that's called News Radio 1310 KLIX. Facebook page where our news team posts a lot of stories there and a lot of photographs from around town, and it'd be an opportunity if you're in a situation where you can't necessarily listen to the radio directly over the air. You can, of course, sometimes listen on the live stream at newsradio1310.com, but you could see the show. Now, I will admit, sometimes small children look at me and they scream and recoil, but well, none of us are as young as we used to be. Okay, let's just leave it at that. 8:45. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Today's topic, when I was doing that short video on Facebook, happened to be this notion that some liberals think that boys and girls should be sharing the same bathrooms and the same locker rooms, as they try to break down, of course, any notion that there are gender differences in this country. You know, when I was a kid growing up, we knew. Some of the criticism, in fact, I heard the last few days, I think Mark Stein, when he was filling in for Rush earlier this week, brought this up. Media is trying to poke fun at Donald Trump because Donald Trump really loves women. Somehow a man who's got an interest in women is now considered to be the abnormal, but a guy who thinks he's a girl on a particular day is normal if he goes into the girls' room. There's something wrong with that picture, and I'm not quite clear how liberals are going to explain that to the electorate this year. I think that this is not a winner for them. They've managed to drive some wedges between people in the past with their war on women and their war on gays and their same-sex marriage. But having some grubby 35-year-old man share the potty with my daughter is not going to convince me ever to vote for a Democrat. 8:46, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I've got a great guest who will be joining us tomorrow, and I don't know why I did this. I took my planner out, and my planner is now sitting in my way here. I got to move this over so I can tell you about Dr. Eric F. Jones. He'll be in the studio with us tomorrow. He'll spend some time with us, and he's talking about a type of medicine that has been long forgotten in the Western world, but has now been revived. And a lot of people who are practicing what we call modern medicine are saying, you know what? We still need some of these traditional methods as well. He uses a holistic, systemic approach to wellness. He's been in practice almost 25 years. That's a very busy man. He's got a master's and doctorate degrees in marriage and family therapy, but he's also got a background in chiropractic. He uses methods of alternative healing, naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual and cognitive self-regulation, napathy. Now, these can help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. He's accepting new patients, and he has evening and Saturday appointments. His telephone number is 731-7178, 731-7178. And as I mentioned, he also has a new Facebook page. You can go there and you can see some headlines and some updates about just details and information he'd like to pass along as a doctor. The group name at Facebook is Eric F. Jones, PhD, Mental Health and Wellness Therapist. I was sharing with all of you earlier these stories coming out about the dark side of this notion that girls and boys should be sharing the same potties and locker rooms, and how this is not a winner for the Democrat Party in this country. There's a couple of these stories come from the Daily Signal today. I'm going to reference the Daily Signal in the next hour as well because I happen to know the editor. We go way, way back, and I'm going to mention something that he was involved with yesterday too as well. But in the meantime, Utah school board members push to reject federal money to avoid transgender guidelines. Now, President Obama says if you don't go along with his effort to have your daughters raped in the locker room, you could lose federal funding, and they'll fine your school district possibly as well. The writer says instead of following transgender student guidelines pushed by the Obama White House, some Utah district school board members have plans to create a budget that would be free from federal funding, according to reports. Now, this is the problem you've got as a school board member when you go to the public and you say we are no longer going to be taking federal dollars. We're going to have to raise X number of dollars, or we're going to have to cut programs. This is the whole White House approach. It's to try to force people, coerce them through the lack of money or the threat of fines into going along with this screwball policy. And unfortunately, if you've been taking, as we said the other day, Caesar's coin, Caesar's going to dictate the rules. So your only option is find other ways to fund your school programs. Brian Halliday, Wendy Hart, and Paula Hill, school board members in the Alpine School District, penned an open letter to Utah state leaders stating their opposition to the president's transgender student guidelines. That came from the Salt Lake Tribune. And on page 2 of this, it says Board President John Burton said at a school board meeting Tuesday that the school district does not plan to reject federal funding in the next budget and that the board would not be addressing the letter of the 3 board members, according to the Daily Herald. But Utah's governor says he's opposed to this. Are we going to get beyond, though, just, well, we here at the state capitol are opposed to boys peeing next to girls and rubbing them with soap in the shower room? Yes, we're opposed, and we'd like the president to know we're opposed. Well, Governor, what are you going to do about it? Well, I'm going to be opposed tomorrow as well. Yes, but Governor, how do we stop it? Well, we're going to tell the president we don't like it. But Governor, that will not change the policy. Well, you know that I am on record against this policy, and I am a normal human being, and we will not tolerate this in Utah schools. This is what you're getting from a lot of these governors. You're getting a lot of rhetoric. Somebody has to take some action. And that school board president has already said, we're going to bow down before Caesar because we don't want to lose the money from Washington. 10 minutes away from 9 o'clock. It's 64. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You're on the air. You're up next.
Well, I think the best way that, say, Idahoans can just rebel against this whole men in the bathroom thing, perverts in the bathroom, is you've got an entire summer to prepare. I would say a good general revolt of nothing but homeschoolers would really send a message. I mean, they're your children. It's, make a stand for them in a way that would really get people's attention. I mean, do you really love your children? Then start homeschooling.
I have a friend who he homeschooled, I think, 9 of his children, and he did not do it. His wife did. He ran a contracting business, and she took care of the homeschooling of all of the children. And I said to him one day, and by the way, he's a very good Mormon. I always had a tremendous amount of respect for him. I said, how did you manage to do this? And he said, I'll tell you what, it wasn't easy. He had to work a lot of 15-hour, 16-hour days himself in order to pay the bills at home. But he got it done, and he said, that's the thing people have to realize about homeschooling is there's going to be some sacrifices that need to be made, because I think that's the number one drawback is people say, how can we afford to do it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they're your children. Plus, summer's coming. You have an entire summer to prepare for this. We have a massive advantage in that compared to the guy you just talked about. We can do this. I mean, if you really love your children, do it.
I think that's what you got to realize is there's got to be tremendous sacrifice made, and are people today willing to do that? That's the question. We are so self-absorbed in so many cases. Can you imagine any of this younger generation on college campuses ever doing anything like that in service of someone else? 8:53. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Thank you, sir. The funny part about it is here the government is coercing us to toe the line, so to speak. And, they're bankrupt. They are absolutely bankrupt. They have no money. All they're doing is writing hot checks. And, how can our legislators put up with it? Like, all this stuff here that they're coming down with these big chunks of money to tell us what to do. You can put a lock on a restroom, for heaven's sake, and that way, when whoever goes in there has it locked, it's not a problem. But these kinds of issues, to me, are just ridiculous. We have a lot more important issues to worry about than this kind of stuff, and here they are.
Yeah, I thank you much for the telephone call and for the input today as well. And I will say this, since we did speak about this with Congressman Labrador yesterday, and he was one of those people who's not very happy about it. We now have 73 House Republicans, and they gathered all of these signatures yesterday. They signed a letter demanding answers on the bathroom directive. This also from the Daily Signal today. By Wednesday night, the letter, which will be sent Thursday, had attracted those signatures from GOP legislators. While the bathroom directive caught Republicans off guard, you wonder how, because the New York Times reports that the Obama White House had been working on the new guidelines for months. But at least these people are saying, you know what, our constituents aren't happy about this. But 73, my gosh, there should be 535 people in Washington saying enough. And that's not the case. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Good morning. Hello, anybody home? Apparently not. All right, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Let's try another line here. You're on the air. You're on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Thanks, Bill. Hey, what I can't understand is why the government doesn't get their own house in order before they start throwing all these other edicts around. Sanctuary cities and the illegal aliens coming in and things like that could be taken care of and make this country a better place if they got to go out and harass everybody with these other stupid regulations.
Yeah. It seems to me that the future is pretty dim if we don't turn these people out. I thank you much for the call. You're on the air. You're up next. Good morning.
Hi. Hey, I've got a solution to this. Why don't we make Congress have to follow the same laws when Nancy Pelosi has to shower with Harry Reid, and all of our solutions will be solved.
I wonder which end of that would be more frightening.
Neither one I want to see, but if they're going to be dictating where my kids have to shower, then I think all rules should have to apply back to the federal government, back to the federal workforce. When the post office people have to start peeing next to each other and everything else, then instead of just inundating the youngest kids and then in a generation, they'll be absorbed. Let's start with everyone.
I think that
they want to truly make it, and then let's see what kind of a blowback. And
yeah. And of course, the Obama girls go to a private school. I guess they could be, thank you for the call, they could be doing it too. How quickly can you empty out a shower?
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Yeah, there is something called gravity. It would be quite frightening. You're up next. We got about a minute left before the break. You're on the air.
Hello?
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say something about the bathroom rights. We have support. We have to support the gay people, and that's great. That's fine. I don't have a problem with them.
Well, I don't know about supporting them. I think that just getting out of their way is okay, but I don't know that I have to go out and support them in any way.
Let me finish. And then we have to support the black people. That's fine. But what about the other races? What about the other people and their religion? We have to start respecting each other on an equal balance instead of putting these people on a higher balance and ignoring our feelings and our privacy. I mean, I wouldn't want my little boy or little girl sitting next to a pervert inside a bathroom, and you're thinking, okay, well, they're in there using the restroom. Now you have to go with them. I won't leave my children alone. I have to follow them everywhere they go.
Sounds to me like you've got too much white privilege. At least that's what they're telling us at the White House.
See, and it's wrong. They're taking away our gun rights. They're taking away what this country was founded on, which was God and our rights. If you look at the Declaration and the U.S. Constitution, it's literally in our favor, the people. And if we don't say something and speak up about our feelings and our rights as a nation, we're going to lose this nation. And it doesn't seem like too many people are going out and speaking about this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the call. I would hope more people would speak up just like that. Christian Post says Phil Robertson has weighed in. A&E will probably threaten to cancel him again and then have to back off. He said it creates a sexual free-for-all where depravity is going mainstream. Amen. News is next. One more hour of Top Story with Bill Colley coming up in just a few minutes right here on KLIX.